I'm screaming at the TV. He's got to be sent off. It's a handball. Why wasn't it, Chris?
I think red. The VAR check was very quick. There's actually a second reaction by that player where he sort of pats the ball out of the direction of Eberechi. I think if we'd have had a little bit more time to check it, we might have had a different outcome. It's something we don't see very often.
It had to be ruled out. He had no choice here, right?
The reason there was a bit of noise around it and surprised us, people didn't know the law. It was as simple as that, and people don't like it, but there's an acceptance now that it was the right call.
Hello and welcome to Men in Black, a brand new weekly podcast where we suit up in judgment and dive into the Premier League's most disputed VAR calls. I'm Sam Matterface, and today and for the rest of the season, I'm going to be joined by the former Premier League referee, Chris Foy. Hi, Chris. You okay? Are you looking forward to this? This is brilliant. I can't wait. I've always wanted to have a go at a referee.
Yeah, you have a go at me, Sam. You're getting a red. We're not messing about today, mate.
I'm only joking, ref. Today, in the first episode, we'll be looking to cast our eye over some of the big incidents from the opening weekend of the Premier League season. And in future episodes, we're going to be looking at some of the grassroots big decisions that happen in your leagues near you. So make sure you start sending us your clips, and you never know, we could be dissecting your match right here on talkSPORT. For now, though, let's turn our attention to those big incidents over the weekend, and let's start with Anfield on Friday night. So it's Friday night. It's the big kickoff to the brand new season. 13 minutes in, I'm sitting there watching the TV. Hugo Ekitike goes steaming through. I think he's away. Senesi sticks out his arm, and I'm screaming at the TV screen. I'm sending Chris a text message. He's got to be sent off. It's a handball. Why wasn't he, Chris?
The defender, Senesi, for Bournemouth, you can actually see the ball deflects. I think it's off his thigh onto his arm, and play was allowed to continue. And I thought, well, that can't be a handball offence because it's not deliberate. And, of course, when you see the replay, there's actually a second reaction by that player where he sort of pats the ball out of the direction of Ekitiki's sort of run. So it was checked by the VAR who completed it. So there is a number of considerations here for denial of a goal-scoring opportunity. So let's take it as a whole. Let's look at the whole picture. So is there an offence? Well, yes, there is an offence. There's a handball offence. We've now got to look at the direction of travel that Ekitike was taking. I think that's fine. I think he's running forward. He's got a clear run on goal. We talk about the number of covering defenders. There weren't any covering defenders. And we talk about being in possession of the ball or the likelihood of regaining possession. Now, I think he would have got possession, albeit that the ball was a little bit bouncing. But the big thing and the last thing was distance from goal. And I think this was the reason why a review wasn't recommended. They felt that the distance was too far from goal. But in my opinion, I think Ekitike would have got possession. And albeit he was a distance, he was actually on the run and on the move. And I think if he'd have received a red card for this offence, I don't think there'd be too many complaints.
Because you've explained it from your point of view there, but actually the referee, who was Anthony Taylor, and the VAR, Michael Oliver, according to the Sky commentary team, Jamie Carragher, had a very different conversation to that. I mean, that they suggested that it was not given as a handball because it deflected from his thigh onto his arm, which was your initial thought when you first saw it. And then later on down the line, the Premier League Match Centre said the referee's call of no red card to Senesi was checked and confirmed by VAR, with the action deemed not to be a clear handball offence nor a denial of a goal-scoring opportunity due to the distance from goal. It's subjective. We've all got different viewpoints on it, and handball is subjective. But I think most of us disagree with that, don't we?
Yeah, I would disagree with the handball situation because, as I said to you, when I first saw it, it deflected off his thigh, and quite clearly that can't be a handball. But there was a second reaction, and that was the one where he knocked the ball, the defender Senesi, away from Ekitike, not too far. It's only a little bit of a space. And I'm thinking to myself, if he doesn't do that, he's got this clear run. So as I said to you, if he gets a red card in that situation, Sam, I don't think he'll have any complaint.
No. But can you understand people's confusion? Because Jamie Carragher is on the TV telling him that they denied it for one reason, and then all of a sudden we're getting a justification from the Premier League Match Centre which says something different. That creates a little bit of confusion. I mean, it's why we're here on a Monday to make sure that there's clarity.
Yeah, I think I don't know where Jamie Carragher got his information from, but the Premier League Match Centre has the ability to be in communication with the VAR hub, and that's where they will have got their information from
Well, he was
to
listening
put
to the
out the
VAR,
explanation.
wasn't he? Because
Mm.
commentators on the TV get the chance to listen to, well, I think, one side of the VAR conversation.
I think one of the difficulties on Friday with this situation was the VAR check was very quick. I think if we'd have had a little bit more time to check it, as I said, it was quick, we might have had a different outcome.
Interesting. It didn't really change the course of the game because Liverpool went on and won it. But when we're talking about proximity to goal, I wanted to bring up to you a couple of other incidents because you remember back in early of last season, I think it was October time, Saliba got sent off for Arsenal against Bournemouth, and Miles Lewis-Skelly got sent off later in the season against West Ham for Arsenal as well. Those two were sent off for denial of a goal scoring opportunities, but were only just in the opponent's half. And this is a similar sort of purview, isn't it? Similar sort of geography.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think for me the telltale sign with this one was Ekatike he was on the move. You know, he was running directly towards goal when that ball was sort of just knocked out of his path ever so slightly. Um, I think red. I think the other two, you know, you talk about Miles Lewis-Skelly and Saliba, the two red cards. I think, again, those were the correct decisions. But red on this occasion, I don't think we can have too many complaints.
So Anthony Taylor and Michael Oliver, the two best referees in the business, probably at this moment in time. Do you think it's early season rustiness, not wanting to make a big call 13 minutes into the season? Do you think there's a bit of reticence there? Does that happen to a referee?
No, not at all. As you said, you know, two of the best referees just back from the Club World Cup. You know, these are referees who've operated in actual World Cups as well, and they'll be doing their utmost to get themselves on the plane this summer for the World Cup in 26. So it's one to reflect on. It's one they'll discuss at training camp. They'll work through it. Yeah, it's been a real talking point, that one, and the fact we're talking about on a Monday morning says it's still rolling on.
Okay, so that's the first big decision 13 minutes into the season, and we think the VAR and the referee didn't get the right call there. Let's move on. So the officials are one down after the first incident of the season, Marco Senesi's handball. We think he should have been sent off in that incident. Liverpool 4, Bournemouth 2 also contained another difficult decision for Anthony Taylor. And this is where I think he came into his own, Chris, because Antoine Semenyo, the Bournemouth forward, suffered racist abuse. And I think Anthony's handling of this and the way he brought the two sets of players, the management teams together, and dealt with Semenyo as a human being was absolutely superb. It was textbook.
Absolutely right, Sam. It was, and thoughts with Antoine Semenyo, you know, on a very very difficult evening. Anthony dealt with this textbook style. He was very calm. He was very composed. Obviously, he became aware of the incident and stopped the game. Made his way to the technical area and spoke to both managers. And while he was speaking to both managers, the stadium manager was there from Anfield, and the fourth official, Farai Halam, who you would have seen taking notes of the incident and making an accurate record of what had actually gone on. And when he had conveyed that information to the managers, it then gives the stadium manager the opportunity to get the cameras on the crowd and try and identify the offender. Once he'd done that, he got the captains in. Again, excellent management, excellent communication. He spoke to both captains and they could relay to their teammates. And before he restarted play, he actually went to the player and spoke to him, and I could actually see him say, "Are you all right?" And a couple of minutes later, he did exactly the same, because player welfare in these situations is paramount. So he'd done everything textbook. He'd gone by the letter of the protocol. Managers, captains, checked on the player himself, and of course, as we know now, the person responsible has been arrested, and process will be followed, and it'll be in the hands of the judiciary.
Yeah, we can't say too much about it now because it is a legal case. But a 47-year-old man was ejected from Anfield following the reports of racist abuse directed towards Antoine Semenyo. Just very quickly, what is the protocol here? If you're on the pitch and you suffer an incident, or you think you've heard an incident like this, what does the player do? Is he supposed to go to the referee? Does he tell his captain? Does the captain go over to the referee? What's the sort of protocol?
Well, the protocol is if the player thinks that they've been, discriminated against or you've got racial abuse, is to approach the referee or approach any match official. And then the next course of action is to actually stop the game, because you've got to go to the technical area and speak to the stadium manager and, of course, the managers, and convey that information. And the fourth official needs to be aware of it as well, because they've got to document it and write everything down. And on this particular game on Friday, Farai Halam, who was fourth, did exactly that. You could see it on the footage. He's got all the notes written down, and that provides more evidence for the authorities to track down the perpetrator.
He's one of the new officials as well, isn't he, into the Premier League this season. Antoine Semenyo then put on his Instagram page a big graphic of "We Move Forward." And one of the things that he said in his little caption at the bottom is that as much as he was upset and he was caused grief by this incident, he then went on to score 2 goals, by the way, and produced a terrific performance. He was absolutely, showered with emotion. He was enveloped by the football family and looked after in a very unified way, I think. And I think he appreciated that. And he talked about that in the aftermath of the incident. And that's the right way to deal with it. Everybody coming together and basically making a huge statement that there is no room for racism. Chelsea 0, Crystal Palace 0. A big incident in this game that created a huge talking point. Me and Perry Groves had a massive row on Game Day Live on Sunday on talkSPORT about this, because he said the game's gone. Troy Deeney texted in saying that the FA and the lawmakers can do one. This sort of goal should never be disallowed. Basically, foul by Marc Cucurella, free kick to Crystal Palace. As Eze's lining up to take this free kick, I'm thinking, this is going to be a problem, because he is terrific. And boy, was it well hit. However, his moment of glory was taken away from him after the goal was disallowed. Now, initially, everyone thought it was for the push for Mark Gahey, but this was very basic application of the law in the end. The referee missed it, but the VAR, James Bell, called him over to the monitor. Was this pretty simple, Chris, in the end?
I thought it was a really good decision, but it did cause a lot of noise, didn't it? Because it's something we don't see, and we don't see very often. Brought in 2019 to tidy up the defensive wall. I think as a former referee, one of the most difficult things is when you were forming a wall prior to this change in law, was when you get attackers who'll stand on the end of a wall, they'll stand in front of a wall, they'll stand behind a wall, they're standing on feet, they're pushing. It becomes very, very difficult and very untidy. So what the law says is if there's 3 or more players form a wall, then you, as an attacker, you've got to be 1 metre away. And that creates space then, so you don't get the shenanigans that you did previously to this happening. So the goal was scored, and as we know, it was checked. The VAR on this occasion was James Bell, who clearly identified that Mark Gahey was actually in the wall, so he was less than 1 metre away. And there was an action there as well where he was sort of pushing a Chelsea defender. Now, he's quite rightly recommended a review. Darren England's gone to the monitor, and of course we had our first pitch side announcement this season, where because it's a subjective decision, and Darren explained it, and the goal was quite rightly disallowed. People don't like it, but there's an acceptance now that it was the right call, so well done to the refereeing team.
But interestingly, right, first of all, a lot of people didn't realise that even after the announcement that this was just a basic part of the law, that because he was close to the wall, it had to be ruled out. He had no choice here, right? Once he was alerted to the fact that Mark Gahey was within 1 metre of the rest of the Chelsea wall, he had to disallow the goal. It's not subjective. It wasn't like, was he interfering? This was Law 13, pretty clear, where there are 3 or more defending teams forming a wall, all attacking players must be at least 1 metre away from the wall until the ball is in play.
Absolutely, and I think the reason there was a bit of noise around it and surprised us, people didn't know the law. It was as simple as that. And the advantage now for the match officials is because they've got the vanishing spray, you can physically see where people are standing and you're indicating. And I think if you watched the game yesterday afternoon at Man United, there was a really good example from Simon Hooper, who used his spray sort of not horizontal against on the pitch. He used it vertically so he could actually see where the attackers were standing and where the defenders were standing. So there's no wriggle room with that. So it's a really proactive piece of refereeing there from Simon. And Darren did the same as well by using the spray.
Interestingly, though, did Darren England forget that bit of the law, or just not notice when initially the free kick was taken? Because he awarded the goal, didn't he? And he needed the referee in the VAR booth to call him over to do a review. Because I must admit, when I was watching it, I forgot. I thought it was for the push. And a lot of that was because of the caption. I know Perry didn't even know that there was a 1 metre rule. So a lot of people might have allowed that to slip their mind. Did Darren England there?
Well, you've actually got a lot going on, haven't you? You know, as a referee in that situation, you want to be monitoring the kicker, you want to be monitoring the wall, because someone sticks an arm up, you've got to look at that. You're looking at everything in and around you that's going on. And the beauty of this decision was Darren covered everything that he could. He obviously didn't see the 1 metre situation, but James Bell, the VAR, did. So it was a really good intervention. So we should be praising the officials on this occasion.
A lot of the conversations, though, after the game and even in our office this morning are about sort of conspiracy theories. Why are they trying to find new ways to disallow goals? We haven't seen this before. Glasner made some comments after the game where he suggested that we need to be careful. There has to be a consistent application of this. Have we seen a consistent application of this before? It's been 6 years that this law has been in the game. Or is this more of a new season clampdown?
No, it's not a new season clampdown. As I said, it's because this has happened. It's the first time we've seen it. There's obviously a lot of noise surrounding this particular situation. So referees are aware of that. You know, when they go to training camp, they look at all decisions. They have full and frank admissions. You know, they're very open about what they do. But there is an acceptance that this was the right call. So it's very difficult to criticise when the match officials do actually get it right.
Okay, so give James Bell a big tick. He certainly puts the officials in the lead now this week. It's 2-1 to them. Busy old day for Sam Barrett down at the Amex Stadium. Brighton 1, Fulham 1. Yassine Iyari committed a challenge on Josh King, which on another day might have generated a penalty. He did give a penalty for Sander Berger's challenge on Jorginho. And there was also a discussion over whether Carlos Baleba should have been penalised for a push on Calvin Bassey. So let's just quickly review these three incidents. The Iyari one on Josh King, why was that not a penalty, Chris Foy?
Okay, so what we've got here is ref's call. I think if you look at this incident in isolation, slow it down and put a magnifying glass on, you'll probably see a little bit of contact on the boot of King, and then Iyari plays the ball. Well, this is not what we're about. We're not about forensically examining and re-refereeing incidents. What we have here is a ref's call. We talk about this high threshold for intervention. It happens very, very quickly. Touch on the boot, kicks the ball as well. Referee says no penalty. A VAR is not going to intervene until they have clear evidence in that situation. So it's what we would call a check complete. Either way, this one, Sam. If Sam Barrett gives a penalty, then it would be not overturned. He didn't give a penalty, and it won't be overturned.
So because this is sort of on the borderline of subjective, it was a lot of contact, it wasn't enough contact, he gets to make the decision and no one's going to go over his head because he's the referee and he has made the call, hence the phrase referee's call. The issue that some people will have with it, though, Chris, is that consistently over the course of the season, we will see some of these given as penalties.
Well, hopefully we may do, but hopefully not, because what we want the referees to do is to go out on the field of play and make good, strong decisions, because everything starts on field. Everything starts with really good decision making. And realistically, you don't want the VAR getting involved because you've made those decisions on the field. But as you say, through the season, we might get a penalty.
But you don't want this to be a penalty. You don't think this is strong enough to be a penalty. The overall refereeing fraternity thinks that this is enough contact that should happen in a contact sport, and this shouldn't go down as a spot kick.
The only time I saw the contact in that was when we got a magnifying glass on it, and it happens quickly. There's a slight touch on the boot. When we look at it back, there's a slight touch on the boot, and he gets the ball. But is this what VAR's about? Is this what refereeing's about? No, it's the ref's call. He's made that decision on field. It's that high bar for intervention. Let the game carry on.
And the game actually wants that high bar for intervention. Doing a survey over the course of the summer, the PGMOL and the Premier League asked all of the stakeholders whether they thought that the threshold was right. being high and having that sort of tolerance for challenges like that. And they came back with a resounding yes, that's what they want. They want a high bar for intervention. Carlos Baliba, 2 hands on the back of Calvin Bassey. Sam Barrett gives a goal kick, not a penalty. Was there any suggestion that he might have given a penalty here?
No, I don't think so. I think what Sam was on the day, I think he was really consistent. You know, if you got your hands on the back, are you pushing? Is it minimal contact and are players going to ground? What players will do is sometimes if they feel contact, they'll go to ground. You know, they'll try and give the referee a decision to make. But Sam was having none of it. You know, he's carving himself a really good career as a referee at the minute on the Premier League, and he trusted his judgment. And when the VAR again looked at that situation, was it one where he could intervene? I don't think so. Let's stick with the ref's call on the day. This is what we want.
And not that we're working for the PGMOL press office, but I should point out at this stage that last season officials got 86% of all key match incidents correct, according to an independent panel which looks at all the incidents. So it's only those very small calls over the course of a season that make a big difference. But sometimes those big incidents do change the nature of the season and the nature of games, which is why we're here to explain when they happen. He did give a penalty, and he gave a penalty correctly for the foul on Jorginho.
He did, and I thought this was a good spot because Jorginho had got in front of Sander Berge in the penalty area, tackle from behind, tangle of legs, down he went, referee points at the spot, the player concerned, Sander Berge, just stood there and looked and thought, it's a penalty. Checked by VAR. There's no clear error there. It's a spot kick.
Okay, so a good day for Sam Barrett, who was in charge of Brighton 1, Fulham 1. Well, we've had some firsts this weekend, haven't we? Not only have you got the first Men in Black podcast, which I know you're absolutely delighted about. Chris is definitely delighted about it as well, because he gets to put the referee's view to everybody. We also had our first in-stadium announcement with Darren England, talking to everyone and explaining his decision as why he disallowed the free kick for Crystal Palace in the Chelsea game. And we had our first punishment for holding on to the ball for too long, Chris. Just explain what happened in Tottenham-Burnley.
Goodness me, early doors, wasn't it? Yeah, Martin Dubravka, the Burnley goalkeeper's got the ball. He's caught it, he's in his possession. There's nobody in front of him, and he dances round the penalty area. Michael Oliver was the referee. He once he identifies he's clear to release the ball. He got the 8 seconds. His hand went in the air. He counted down and blew the whistle and awarded a corner, and quite rightly too.
Yeah, I mean, is that an incident where Dubravka's just lost himself and he's thought it's still last season? And we've all had the briefings, and they've definitely had the briefings as well about the 8-second rule. We've all seen it at the Club World Cup. Did he just sort of lose his mind there?
He probably forgot, didn't he?
Yeah, everyone does, don't they?
But when it happened, you could see him looking, going, I forgot about that.
This is going to happen, though, over the course of the season. It can be actually quite a vital intervention, because basically now the idea is behind this is that to stop goalkeepers wasting time by holding onto the ball for ages, they get an 8-second count. The first 3 seconds are in the referee's head. The next 5, they visibly put their hand up and count down so that everybody can see. And then if the goalkeeper doesn't release the ball, they give a corner. Now, we saw in the Club World Cup that happened late on in a game when Real Madrid were chasing a winning goal. It didn't come to anything. But, if you give away a corner in the last minute of injury time, it's 1-1. That can put your team under pressure. So the thought process behind this is what, Chris? To speed things up, to stop goalkeepers having a loophole in wasting time?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, Sam, you're across every football match like myself, and we love the game. And there's nothing worse than a goalkeeper was catching the ball, throwing themselves on the floor, getting on the haunches, looking round, standing up, moving round, taking time. It's about ball in play. It's about keeping the game moving. It was a first. It was well dealt with and well received, because we want to see the ball in play. We don't want time wasting, and we certainly don't want time absorption.
Just to clarify, though, Chris, there has been a little bit of noise about the fact that there was another incident where Dubravka held it for 14 seconds. On Friday night, we saw Alisson holding onto the ball for a very long time. And the consistency of application of this law is going to be really important, isn't it? Because otherwise people are going to go, hold on a second, you can't penalise him and not penalise him.
Well, consistency is key in all decision making for match officials. So what you have to bear in mind is once the goalkeeper's got the ball, that's not when the count starts. It's when it's clear. When the goalkeeper can actually release the ball when there's no one in front of him and he can either kick it or throw it. Just keep it simplified that's when the count starts, when they are allowed to release the ball.
And who decides that? Because it's subjective, right?
That's the referee. As you quite rightly mentioned before, they count the 3 in the head and then the hand goes up in the air for the 5 seconds and we count down.
We're across it just about, but we will forget over the course of the season. So we need Chris here to remind us. And that's why we're here every single week, to remind you of the laws of the game or to educate you on the laws of the game, because there's so many of them now. And Chris will tell you this law book has gone from being a very small little pamphlet to being almost a biblical tome now with the amount of words that are in the IFAB laws of the game. So we try and pick them apart to make it easier for you so you can digest this podcast nice and quickly, then go down the pub tonight and be an expert. We love it. Chris, thank you very much. If you have been watching today and you think, hold on, there's an incident in my game that I played yesterday which needs a look, then we'll take some grassroots clips later in the season. So send them in to the address that's on the screen. And if you've got a dodgy decision that you weren't happy with, or you've got an example, even better, of a brilliant young referee, we want to see it and we'll put it on Men in Black. Make sure you tell all your friends about us and give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast from.